Righty. Okay, synced. So today, starting back up the chapter thing. I know it's been a long time since I would have posted on my last one. I have become quite stuck on this chapter. I had read past this chapter, I believe up until we're on chapter 3. I had read past up until chapter 12, just so I could keep my interest in the book. I was very interested, and I wanted to read it. I tend to read this book at, once every 2 or 3 days. And however, when trying to record a video on talking about the chapters, I got stuck on this chapter. Mostly because this chapter is describing something, or the properties of something, or a type of person specifically, and it doesn't talk much about... It talks to some of the causes, but majoritively talks about properties, and doesn't go much on how to deal with them, except or how to interact with them outside of the last page of the chapter. The chapter is 5 pages. 4 pages. And only the last one really describes on anything about interacting with it. So there's not much to go off there. However, there is some. And I'll start off with the general idea of this chapter, which is the Backworldsmen. The Backworldsmen, hard for me to pronounce. And the main ideas of the Backworldsmen is a type of person. This type of person has lost his fancy for man, or looks past man. And when this, in a sense, needs more of an explanation than the world around him. It needs more of an explanation than what the eyes and ears and understanding of man can give. And they do so, or they wish to look away from their suffering. They do so to look away from their suffering and to see something greater, to give meaning to life. And so they look past their own suffering into something more divinely, and they are divinely dissatisfied with their world around them, or at least they're dissatisfied with how the world looks around them. Once on a time, Zarathustra also cast his fancy beyond man. Like all Backworldsmen, the work of suffering and tortured God did the world then seem to him. Tortured God, the world once seemed to him. This is an interest. It will become more clear towards the end of it. The dream and this dictation of a god did the world then seem to me, colored vapors before the eyes of a divinely dissatisfied one. Good and evil, and joy and woe, and I and thou, colored vapors, did they seem to me before creative eyes. The Creator wished to look away from himself. Thereupon he created the world. So this can give an example of necessarily why God would have created a world, but I'm pretty sure generally Nietzsche was atheist, and this thing is coming from an atheistic perspective, at least not the Backworldsmen are far from the atheists. They're the ones who created religion and are the followers of religion. But in this world, their creation of the world is more of a creation of how they perceive this world, or how they describe its being. The Creator, the man, the Backworldsmen, wished to look away from himself. Thereupon he created the world. This is not necessarily how I think it's being used in the text, but I think this is how you can translate it. Intoxicating joy is it for the sufferer to look away from his suffering and forget himself. Intoxicating joy and self-forgetting did the world once seem to me. This world, eternally imperfect, an internal contradiction's image. And now this is where I think a lot of stuff starts to get really interesting. An imperfect image and intoxicating joy to his imperfect creator. Thou did the world seem to me. Now I'm going to start breaking up the pages. This is not the order, but I have ordered it because I think this is the best way to understand what he has written here. A man was he, and only a poor fragment of a man and ego. Out of my own ashes and glow it came unto me, the phantom, and verily, it came not unto me from the beyond. So the phantom in this is how we believe God came to be, or necessarily our beliefs, this phantom of understanding, or this somewhat divine understanding. Ye brethren, the God whom I created was a human, human work, and human madness, like all gods. So the phantom is the God he created. He, as an outcome, is a human work and out of human madness. Suffering was it, and impotence that created all backwards men. So the suffering impotence is what led humans to do things. This is in the first thing when he says, out of my own ashes. This is the suffering. The phantom is our answers, our faith, our God. And they come from your ashes, or our ashes, which are our longing, our mind, our madness. Our sort of wish for an answer. What is it? Bright flame I contrived for myself, and lo, thereupon the phantom withdrew from me. Now this will go into a description of surpassing this need for phantom. A great answer I contrived for myself. Instead of, I think this is, where is it? A new pride taught me mine ego, and that teach I unto men. This is what Zarathustra has learned, in a sense, and what wishes to teach man to surpass this reliance on a phantom, to teach all backwards men to break away and to learn anew. This new thing he wishes to learn is no longer to trust thou's head, no longer to thrust one's head into the sand of celestial things, but to carry it freely, a terrestrial head, which giveth meaning to the earth. In this sense, you raise your head, and you raise your head onto your own neck, and you hold it there, and you walk about, and you see what is. And the new meaning of the world you will find in its properties, and this new meaning of life you will find. You didn't need to push your head into creating meaning out of nothing, or to create something greater that is just a divine reflection of reality around you. All you need to do is raise your head and to watch, to observe the earth itself. And then he goes into somewhat of an argument against the world that the Backworldsmen promote. And he says, hey kitty. Wow. But that other world is well concealed from man, that dehumanized inhuman world, which is a celestial knot, and the bowels of existence do not speak unto man except man. This is my favorite quote, one of my favorite quotes. The bowels of existence do not speak unto man except as men, or man, or people. You know how it is. The bowels of existence being somewhat of the creation, the divine truths, the meanings, all of this stuff, great truths that the Backworldsmen used to preach of creators and stuff, is only taught through the Backworldsmen or a man himself, a human, a living thing, not God. And he says, verily, it is difficult to prove all being, and hard to make it speak. All being being the all being. Tell me, ye brethren, is it not the strangest of all things best provided or proved? He goes into this contemplation of an ego, which I do not necessarily understand. It talks about so much of the ego having a disdain for life itself, and how it lives an upright existence, and how it learns to give names and describe things upon the universe and give properties of explanation without much of some of the divine explanation. But it's a bit of a short explanation for what this is actually thing. Going somewhat backwards, when we're talking about Nietzsche's or Zarathustra's argument to the properties of this universe, it kind of talks about how, when it says dehumanize or inhuman world, that is the celestial knot of the universe, or God. A world which is designed to be out of touch or unhuman, or so. It's like describing me the greatest thing. You can't by properties, because as soon as you describe something great, you can somewhat describe something better. So it's somewhat of an infinite level of it creates itself an infinite level of complexity, and this is the celestial knot. That is what the Backworldsmen preach. And he says, when the somewhat thing is that from their misery, from the misery of the Backworldsmen, they sought escape, and the stars were too remote for them, as too close, if I'm correct, remote. Then they sighed, oh, that there were heavenly paths by which to steal into another existence and into happiness. Then they contrived for themselves the bypath and the bloody draughts. And early in this passage, he had mentioned, holy in like invention, heavenly worlds, and redeeming blood drops, as proposed, and which is the bloody draughts, I believe. Beyond the sphere of their body and this earth, and now fancy themselves transported. These ungrateful ones, they figure themselves as now being somewhat above due to their belief as in like being above, and then having like you created me, but in your greater, you're somewhat infinitely great, and you're like throughout your infinite greatness, you decided to create me in somewhat of an image where I have importance. This is one thing when you talk about the apes, they're apes. So many people get upset at this idea because it's like, oh, the apes are bloody monkeys. They're not bloody monkeys, and also, we are. It's like you can't really. It's not that you can't argue. You can argue with any level of logic. It's just hard to argue with it, and somewhat virtually impossible to disprove what has been proven. You can say the past is always unknown, no matter how much fact we have behind it. But if we choose to start believing in truths, such as God, it's best to choose the truths which are closest to the provable. Yeah. He also, towards the end, he talks about what did they owe their convulsion and rapture to, or this great transportation to heavenly bodies. They owe it to the reflections and things they believe, and that come from the body on the earth. Body being human, mind, all that sort of stuff. Earth being our earth. Then he goes into explaining how to interact, which is his final question, how to talk with, or how to see upon these sickly, which he had spoken of them as the Backworldsmen as being sickly. Gentle is Zarathustra to the sickly. Verily, he is not indignant at their modes of consultation and ingratitude. May they become convulsants and overcomers, and create higher bodies for themselves, which is generally like the past 3 chapters, kind of Nietzsche's thing, is to create higher truths for yourself. Many sickly ones have there always been among those which. Many sickly ones. Okay, so many sickly ones being Backworldsmen. Many sickly ones have there always been amongst those who muse and languish for God. Muse and languish kind of meaning grow weak in the sense of are in need of, or are creative influences by, or creatively influenced by the need for God, or they somewhat need an explanation of God. So you find many Backworldsmen are hanging about these people. In a sense, you could say these people themselves are Backworldsmen. However, due to their already being institution book understanding, it itself knows its vulnerable minds for the taking and enacts upon them. The Backworldsmen, they always gaze towards dark ages, and then indeed religions faith in something. They insist on being believed in, and that doubt is sin. Talks about some of the properties of general religion. We all get that kind of stuff. And then the end of the chapter, someone talks about the next chapter, saying, but it is a sickly thing to them, and gladly would they go out of their skin. Therefore, hearken they to the preachers of death. Preachers of death in the next chapter. Hearken meaning listen. So, the despisers of the body, the Backworldsmen love to listen, and themselves love to listen to the despisers of death, the despisers of the body, and the despisers of the body themselves are Backworldsmen. Fulfill its servant. And then he comes to the end saying, he recommends, hearken rather, me brethren, to the voices of healthy bodies. It is more upright and pure voice. More uprightly and purely speaketh the healthy body, perfect and square built, and it speaketh of the meaning of the earth. So at the end of the chapter, hearken, listen to those who come from a healthy body, who hold themselves up, who are built in a sense physically and mentally. They hold themselves. You wouldn't call someone who has a healthy body someone who sits in a wheelchair or uses crutches to walk about. And that is what the Backworldsmen use. They use crutches for existence. And we admire the people when it comes to physical physiques, the ones who can hold themselves properly, who can move about, who can use their body with strength and power. And that is what we admire. It's the healthy and the beautiful. And that is the goal of the Superman, or us to become the Superman. I didn't get this stuff completely. I'm not done with the book yet. But that's what I got. I hope you got something out of this. Next chapter, the preachers of the despisers of the body. See ya.